And we are back and we are also live. Good evening, good morning, good night, wherever you are coming from. Good evening, everyone, whether you're tuning in from Africa, Asia, Antarctica, Oceanic, South America, wherever you're coming from, Europe. Good night, good evening. We're here this evening to have a discussion, of course, that is on the tongue of everyone all weekend, last week, on the weekend. And with me here is Mr. Leighton Levy and, of course, Rainford Hunter, who is no stranger to this platform. Good evening, everyone. Just by
Good evening.
your good evening. Gentlemen, welcome, welcome, welcome.
Yeah, it's good to be here.
Awesome,
Yeah, man.
awesome.
Yeah, man. Good to be
Okay.
here as well.
Okay, so just going to give you, gentlemen, 30 seconds to just interview yourself quickly, starting with Leighton, who is the newest person to this platform. Welcome, Leighton, to HP Chat Track Studio.
Yeah, it's good to be here. Of course, my name is Lee, for those who are not familiar with me. And of course, I'm the content editor at sportsmax.tv. We're the accompanying website to the Sportsmax channels, which are broadcast across 26 countries in the Caribbean. We support that by bringing stories from across the region. We're virtually in every country through our connections with our networks. And we have an active website with interesting stories right across the Caribbean from you name the sport, we have it. We cover it. As long as Caribbean athletes play it, we cover it. And as you know, the website has been doing pretty well and it's engaging a lot of fans across the world as far as India and Pakistan. So that's pretty much a synopsis of me. I've been in media for since 1990 actually, and used to be a crime reporter, a court reporter, and became a news editor and a managing editor for a newspaper in St. Martin called The Today. And for the past 17 years, I've been exclusively doing sports whether the radio show that used to be on nationwide radio or on the different media platforms, CVM during the Olympics and World Championships, and of course Sportsmax during the last couple of Olympic Games.
And thank you very much for being here tonight, Leighton. Of course, we have a lot to talk about. And the topic tonight is really about the Grand Slam series that has prematurely ended. And Rainford, do you want to quickly introduce yourself?
Yeah. So I'm Rainford Hunter. Founder and CEO of we're WCAMG Sports Agency, which is we have been in business since 2006 as a sport agent in the sports agency business, and we start up in the process of pivoting. Right now, as a matter of fact, we have done that a few years ago, where we're starting to do some different things. Representing coaches, not so much current athletes, even though we're still involved, with doing that. But mainly we have pivoted to, working with, coaches and retired athletes, as well. We also does help our international if they want to remain in the US to pursue a professional, career. We sort of help them with paperwork and things like that. We're not attorneys, so we don't provide legal advice to athletes, but we do help them with respect to completing paperwork and things like that as far as the immigration side of the business is concerned. But we realize that retired athletes most times struggle when they leave the sport, and we are trying to see how we can fill that void in helping them to continue to generate revenues even long after retirement. So that's one of the things we're doing.
Welcome, gentlemen. And of course, I am HP, founder and host and CEO of HP Chat Track. And what we do over here is our aim is really to celebrate our legacy through our athletes, coaches, and all the stakeholders who have contributed to our rich track and field legacy. But, gentlemen, tonight we are here about the Grand Slam. My bags were partially packed and ready for LA as one of their media representatives when I got the news on Thursday. What are your overall thoughts, though, of the Grand Slam so far with the three outings that we've seen? What is your overall thought of the concept? Let's start with the newest guest to the panel.
I actually liked it. What I liked most about it was the head to heads. I mean, you had like for the short hurdles, for example, you had some of the best hurdlers in the world, and then they would run the flat 100, the best 400-meter hurdles in the world, and then they run the flat 400. It brought a new dynamic to the sport, which I totally enjoyed. I thought the concept was something that would engage fans in a way in which perhaps a traditional track meets wouldn't, because traditional track meets, especially here in Jamaica, are very long and enormously tedious. I mean, especially the development meets are like 200 hours long. You have 20 heats in every event. I think that is kind of tedious. But for events like Racers Grand Prix and well, the now defunct Jamaica International Invitational and short-lived Jamaica Athletic Invitational, it was comparable in the sense that it brought a new energy to the dynamic, to the landscape, and I thought it was a good thing for fans of the sport, for the purists. For the casual fan, however, it might have presented a challenge being a 3-day meet in Jamaica and 3 days in Miramar. But then, as we saw, we'd get back to that later on, but then eventually come down to 2 days in Philadelphia. I'll get to the reasons why later on. But for the most part, I thought the performances were exceptional. But we saw 48-60 in Jamaica from Salwa Adversaire. In Miramar, we saw what 12-17 and 12-19, the second and third fastest times ever in the sprint hurdles. And of course, in Philly, we saw some outstanding performances right across the board. So I thought it was a good concept. Unfortunately, the teething pains, I think, came to bear eventually with lack of crowd size. I mean, in Jamaica, for example, they were giving away free tickets after the first day because there were no fans in the stadium, hardly any fans in the stadium, primarily because I think they misread the culture of Jamaica. That everybody believes that Jamaica is a big track and field country. Perhaps we are on the track, but in terms of the fan base, we are very small. Jamaicans are, I've said it many times, and I say it again, Jamaicans are wagonists. We don't care about anybody unless they're winning. And so during the Usain Bolt era, with Usain Bolt, Chilean Fraser Price, Elaine Thompson Hera, Million Walker, Bridget Foster Hicks, and everybody knows the names. We used to gravitate towards when they were competing on the global stage. But if you check back at those times, with the exception of probably a couple of years, the stadium was pretty much empty, except for the grandstand, watching the best athletes in the world. When Usain Bolt got beaten by Johan Blake in 2012, only the grandstand had crowds in there. So if the best athletes in the world could not attract a full stadium, why would people think, for example, that bringing an international meet here with a new concept would bring people out? And of course, there are other factors we will mention later on as well. But generally, I thought that was probably the first misstep, if you can call it that, wherein they misread the culture. The time of day was too early for one. On a Sunday, Jamaicans not coming. A lot of Jamaicans prefer to go to church and have their Sunday dinner before they get out to anything. So going to a meet at midday was never going to work. And so there were some cultural things. Of course, the ticket prices were too high for Jamaicans as well. Average Jamaican earns less than what people think. I mean, minimum wage in Jamaica was $14,000 or $15,000 a week. If you're selling tickets for 30 US and 10 and 15 US dollars, it might not seem like a lot of money if you're in the US, but for a lot of Jamaicans, that's a week worth of lunch money and bus fare. So there are some issues that I think were probably overlooked that impacted the way the crowds turned out for the Grand Slam track meet in Jamaica. We saw a better crowd in Miramar, but Miramar is a much smaller facility than the 35,000 seat stadium in Jamaica. Philly had a good turnout, 25,000 people, but the thing is that Philly has a big stadium as well. So 25,000 people in that stadium would not necessarily look like what you get at the Penn Relays. So there were the perception and the aesthetics of the meet itself weren't as good as they were expecting, but the action on the track was incredible.
Your thoughts, Rainford?
Yeah, and one of the things I was going to say, and Leighton sort of said it at the end with respect to Jamaica. Jamaica, Sunday's a big church day in Jamaica, right? Sunday's a big church day in Jamaica. So, and people not gonna, Sunday dinner in Jamaica is not like it's not like here in the US. So, where people, people don't I suppose they have get together and have big meals on Sundays, as well. But when it comes to Jamaica, you really have to understand the culture. So doing a meet on a Sunday, like that is a miss as far as Grand Slam track was concerned. So I completely understand with with Leighton on that. But I too agree with Leighton. I thought the model and Michael Johnson they came up with an excellent idea, to do this Grand Slam track series. A track and field needed something like this. They needed the sport need a change, and that was kind of what Michael Johnson was trying to do, with the sport by introducing, the concept that he has introduced. And the Jamaica leg, I thought the Jamaica leg, went well. The Saturday crowd I thought was pretty decent. Maybe Friday not as much, but as Leighton said, um, you know, people are coming from work, and most times people are not going to take time off from work necessarily to attend a sporting event. Unless it's a special situation where Lionel Messi is coming to town, like what happened the other day. But normally, people just don't do that. Saturday is a big day, when it comes to sport. People attending sporting events in Jamaica. But I thought, all in all, the model itself, the concept that MJ came up with, is exactly the kind of things that track and field needs in order to evolve as a sport. And he tried to do something different, and I hope he comes back next year. I know we're gonna talk more, about that, but I'm fully in support of it. I thought the Miramar, leg was good, um, and the Pennsylvania leg, from what I feedback I've received, probably was the best.
Yes, yeah, it was probably the best.
Right. So you see, it's getting better. With each meet, it was getting better, and I believe the grand finale in LA would have been even better than Pennsylvania. But
And I was looking forward. I was looking forward to LA. I'm not going to lie to you. I was
mhm.
looking forward to LA. I was at the Miami Slam and it was buzzing. It was buzzing, and I was really looking forward to the LA leg of it. But let me ask you, gentlemen, when you heard the news on Thursday, last Thursday, when you heard that the LA Slam is cancelled, what were your initial thoughts?
I wasn't pretty surprised, and I'll tell you why. They came in with, I think, a $30 million budget, I think it was.
Mhm.
And they spent a lot of money in Jamaica. Of course, resurfaced the track, retrofitted parts of the stadium. They spent a lot of money here, and they would have lost on gate receipts because the Friday crowd was weak because of the time of day and, of course, the traffic situation in Kingston. They had free tickets on Saturday and free tickets on Sunday. So whatever gate they would have got would have, from a more participatory crowd would have disappeared. The other thing was that whatever broadcast rights, whatever money they were being paid for broadcast is not premium because this was a new event for one, and two, it was it didn't have an established credibility in terms of what it was because nobody knew what it was. So I don't think a media entity or media network, wherever they were in the world, wasn't going to pay a top dollar to bring that fee. So therefore, any projection they probably would have had in terms of money coming in or revenue coming in from the meet itself would not necessarily have been realized. And then the gate receipts were non-existent. So they would have started losing money from that very first meet in Jamaica. Miramar was better, yes, but it's a smaller crowd, one. And then by the time we got to Philly, it was down to 2 days. Why? Because I think by then that started to bleed a lot more cash than they would have anticipated. Hence the decision to cancel the LA leg. Because based on some reports that I read and some other people that I've spoken to, had they held the LA leg, they would have lost $2.5 million. $2 million, sorry, because the spend on LA would be 2.5 between prize money and gate receipts. And travel would have, well, not gate receipts, but certainly travel and the prize money would have come to $2.5 million. So they would have lost $2 million on the LA leg, which then would not look good on the books if they're trying to attract new sponsors having a loss.
But isn't that what happened when you're just starting up a new brand?
Yes, it is,
Or a
but
new business, a new business.
Yeah, a new
it,
business.
it, it's new business. Yeah, but the thing about it is this, huh? We don't have, especially in the US, track and field is not a big sport anymore. This is not the 1970s or 1980s. Track and field falls behind baseball, NBA, NFL, and NHL, gymnastics, everything, right? So it's way down the pecking order. So even though it's a new concept, the fan base is not being engaged in the way which they were hoping. If they had, say, a full stadium in Jamaica, and it snowballed into a bigger crowd at Miramar, even though Miramar is a really small venue, but and then translated into a 50,000 crowd in Philly, then maybe the revenues would have been the losses would have been offset, whatever money spent would have been offset by the receipts, and probably by then they could have probably started negotiating new broadcast deals. Would say, look, we're getting bigger crowds as we go along, but the thing is that the crowds weren't big enough then to say for them to go back to our broadcast and say, listen, see, we're getting better crowds, we're getting better numbers. Can we renegotiate in terms of whatever money you're paying to host this content on your network? So it wasn't working out in that way. So while it's new, there you're looking at from a business perspective. You don't want to invest money in a loss making venture and significant loss making venture at the first outing. I mean, you can understand an incremental loss, but certainly not of the magnitude had they gone on a held the LA.
Yeah.
Which one would look worse, Rainford? A loss or a premature end?
um, all right, that's those those are both negative, right?
But which
um,
which which is worse?
yeah, those are both negatives. But um, I don't know. I suppose I would. I'm not the one spending the money, so for me to say a premature end, I would prefer a loss, but I'm not the one spending the money. I'm not one of the investors, right? But what I think though is that if you commit yourself to having four meets in a series, and and you raise the funds, the initial funds, let's say $30 million was what we've been hearing. You should have factored all the expenses to make sure that you don't exceed what was budgeted for the four meets. That is why one of the reasons I start to question whether or not it's the finances that is the real issue. But the other thing I might point to as well is that if you look at the board members, if you look at the individuals that Michael Johnson brought in as board members, none of those individuals are track and field people,
Nope.
but they're all money people.
Yeah, there are money people as board members,
They
not
are well,
maybe they're not investors.
and that we don't know. But I think Michael Johnson is a smart enough individual to realize that if you're gonna run a serious business, you're not only gonna recruit board members who can financially support you if you need help, right? But you're gonna look for people who can help problem, especially if that's to do with it is true that serving as a board doesn't necessarily mean that the board members, regardless of how much money they have, is committed to investing in the league, right? That is true, and we don't know that. What I can tell you though is that Robert Smith, who's a board member, is the second
Yeah.
richest black man in America who runs an equity company that is worth 100 billion US dollars, and him himself is worth almost $11 billion. So you're
Mm.
not gonna tell me that Robert Smith is gonna be on this board and sit there and say, Michael Johnson, I'd rather you cancel the last meet rather than give you an extra, $5 million to make it work.
I'm glad
Yeah,
that
but
I'm
It's my
glad that
can,
okay. Go
can I
ahead.
say something like 1 second
Yeah,
here?
yeah.
One of the things that I think we're overlooking as well is if when the meet started, if the broadcast numbers were good, right? And the broadcast numbers had gone up. Not the turnstile numbers, the broadcast numbers had gone up. I think they probably would have been able to have that force meet because then they would have stronger leverage with increasing numbers as the meets went along. But I don't think that was happening. And that's one of the reasons why I think there was a concern about the financial side of things. Because if your numbers are say 300,000, 200,000 per meet, for example, and you're not seeing any incremental curve upwards in terms of the numbers of people watching, is it for the same reason why some series on TV they get cancelled after the first season? It's a similar thing. You're creating content that you're trying to get people to engage with, and if people are not engaging with it, then you might have a problem, and that's the worry. Because going back to the original thought that I started with, the purists would have enjoyed this Grand Slam track, but
Mm-hmm.
getting new eyes on it is perhaps what the challenge was.
Mm-hmm.
I read something. Let me read something for you, gentlemen. And I'm quoting this article. It says several sources confirmed that Grand Slam track had concerns about the venue deal with UCLA, which
Mm.
which is among reasons for cancellation. End quote.
Yeah, venue economics is very key, right? You remember what's happening in LA now with the situation with the ice and everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would contribute to poor ticket sales. So you're leasing the venue for say $10, and you're expecting to make five from the venues from the ticket sales and concession stands, and of course go back to the broadcast rights and maybe merchandising and stuff like that. But if you're having this unrest going on in LA, people are not going to show up. So if people are not showing up, then you have a problem there because then you can't do any business because of the uncertainty of the environment and of course the eventual turmoil that eventually came out when the president sent the Marines into Los Angeles. So maybe people were canceling, maybe people were not buying. Well, the ticket sales, based on what I was told, were really really poor because I think people. I don't know the reasons why, but I can only guess that a lot of the unrest that was going on in LA had some impact on that as well. So those are the factors that may have contributed to the meet being cancelled.
Yeah, that may have been true to a certain extent, but I think that and I think that probably has something to do with the poor. If there were poor ticket sales, I'm pretty sure that would have had something to do with it because but at the same time, a lot of what was going on in terms of coverage were overblown. Um, what was going on in LA wasn't as bad as the media or whoever were putting all this stuff out make it seem. I mean, I was in at the NCAA meet this past weekend, and we were having a conversation. And my son, I believe it was my son who had said what all the stuff that was going on in LA, and I said, "What stuff going on in LA? I just left LA. What stuff?" No, I live on the outskirts in one of the suburbs, and I haven't seen one single Marine. No, it doesn't affect where I live. It doesn't even affect where UCLA is located at. But the perception,
Perception. Yeah.
based on what's going on the news, could have to a lot to people getting scared and saying, "Look at all the riot, all this stuff going on in LA." There was nothing like that. LA is a city of 4 million people. LA alone,
Mm,
the, the suburb of LA is 11 million people. Think of how many times Jamaica can fit into that.
mm,
And we're just talking about LA and the suburban areas. Jamaica is a country of 2.5 million people. Los Angeles alone is 4 million people. That's almost
mm.
twice the size of the Jamaica population. So when something is going on it's like something is going on in Montego Bay, right? You don't
And,
hear
Yeah,
you
about the
and,
don't
and,
tickets, yeah.
and yeah, and you're having an event in Kingston.
you're having an event in King. It doesn't affect you in Kingston.
But
Mhm.
how but
You know,
how the media portray that incident
it's like
will
all of Jamaica.
determine how the people traveling respond to it because they might say, okay, there's riot in Jamaica. Instead of
Mhm.
saying there's a riot in Montego Bay, which is like 3 hours plus or 2 hours, whatever, from Kingston, it has no, bearing. But gentlemen, let me
Mhm.
ask you something. How will this impact the Grand Slam brand? Will it affect this this nice brand that we love? Because let me tell you, I like it. I love it. I love the concept. And when I was in Miami, I did ask Michael the question, how did he came up with this concept? And the last question I asked Michael was, is the Grand Slam here to stay? And he said yes. How will this impact? How will this affect? Will it affect it negatively? Will it just be gone overnight? How will it?
That's
Late.
a difficult one. That's a difficult one. Why? Because I don't think we have enough information what's going on behind the scenes. There was word that there are some new sponsors coming on board. We don't know what the level of sponsorship is going to be like. Does it require a change of, maybe they're discussing a change of format. I remember when Michael was in Jamaica, we asked him, what was going to be the future given what's happening in Jamaica. He says everything will be under review. So the reality is that maybe they're coming up with a new concept that is more viewer friendly, a concept that is more engaging to what do you call it, non-passionate track and field fans. So I would personally, I would love to see it come back, but
Yeah.
whether or not it makes good business sense for the people who are investing in it is another matter altogether. I think if Michael Johnson can convince them that, look, see what happened in Miramar was better than what happened in Jamaica. What happened in Philly was better than happened in Miramar, and make projections based on what he understands about the sport. Because I think, by and large, I think a lot of people who might be investing in this sport are not track and field fans. They are business people who are looking to turn over some kind of level of profit from their investment in this venture. So if he can convince them that it's worth the while to make an investment for a second or even a third year, because my information is that I think Jamaica was actually negotiating for 3 years of the Grand Slam track. So if he can sell that or put that together in a package and sell that to any new investors, I think it can come back, and I think it can come back and come back successfully. The thing is that the numbers have to match what he's projecting. Because if it doesn't, I think then he's going to have a problem selling it to anybody who's serious about investing in it.
Well,
I would love for it to come back. Go ahead, Scouty.
no, I think it's the Grand Slam track is a game changer for the sport. And athlete participation obviously was not an issue. I'm pretty sure there were athletes lining up, to get a phone call, to compete in the series. Obviously, some of the big name athletes, didn't compete for one reason or another, but they have their reasons. Um, but like every other business, when you start, and I think I heard Leighton said this, that when you start a new venture, you start a new business, it's gonna take time, to for all the kinks to get worked out, and to get the real superstars on board. You may have a little bit of skepticism because some people didn't know whether or not people are really gonna get $100,000 if they when they perform, right? Um, but obviously, Michael Johnson came through, and people were getting.
Okay, so Rainford is having some difficulties
Internet, yeah.
here.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's having some internet issues. But let me ask you, Leighton, while until Rainford rejoin us, how do you think this will impact the athletes? Athletes have told me that they're using the Grand Slam to as preparation for Tokyo and stuff. How will this affect their preparation?
Not much. I think they'll probably go back to their usual schedules. I mean, I spoke to Rashawn Clark last weekend at the Racers Grand Prix, and not last weekend. Well, when was it? 7th of June. And he said that Grand Slam competing at Grand Slam track actually helped him get faster because he's running the 400 meter rather than running the flat four. So it helps him with his speed as well. So I think a lot of athletes who are probably using it to run themselves into shape for what is not going to be a long season. I think now with the meet, well, just one meet. The thing about it is that the last meet was at the end of June, which is pretty much the middle of the season, the heart of the season. So I think it doesn't change much right now in terms of what they would probably be doing because they'll already be racing in meets in Europe or in meets in the United States. But one of the things that we saw this year is that there have been three cancellations. US track and field canceled three meets this year. The New York meet and the meet in Bermuda. So Grand Slam track probably would have been able to fill that gap a little bit. That's probably the only impact that I see. But otherwise, there's still the Diamond Leagues going on. There's still some continental meets going on in Europe, so that the athletes can use to get race sharp for either their national championships and eventually for the world championships. So the impact, I think, is not going to be that significant.
Yeah,
Scouty.
yeah. Go ahead. The LA Grand Prix was put on by USA Track and Field was also cancelled. It was supposed to be held at UCLA, the same facility.
Mm.
Do you think the Grand Slam organizers, do you think they have to do any real damage control?
Right now, people are left to speculate. Michael Johnson
Right.
had a long, almost 4 minute statement on was it Thursday night that really didn't say much. What he said was, we've proven that the model works, and Kenny Bednarek and of course wouldn't Melissa Jefferson wouldn't got their money, and the athletes had a good time, and but he didn't really reveal much, and I don't think he could reveal much, and I don't think he knows enough to reveal anything else because right now I think his situation was trying to stem the flow, stem the bleeding that would probably end up with Grand Slam track, being dead on arrival. The thing is that now that he's cauterized by canceling the glass meet and saving himself $2 million, I think now there is still a little bit of life left in it. I think it can be resuscitated, but it has to be resuscitated in a way in which then comes back stronger than it's ever been before, which is going to be very difficult to do. Because from a business standpoint, you're just not trying to prove to the fans that you can come back. You have to prove to the business community, the people who are investing, that this is a venture that's worth going another year up. Because as a friend of mine pointed out, it's not like he has 5 years learning to field money. This is a year by year venture. So
Yeah.
he's going to have to be very strategic and very careful about how he comes back, when he comes back, and how he comes back in terms of ensuring that the meet has a successful future going forward.
Yeah, what I would like to know is the current investors. How do they feel about the overall series, the overall league itself, in terms of what they thus far, right? To get a better understanding, if you know if we were to redo this, or if MJ was to redo this next year, would those same investors, be on board? Were they excited about it? Did they see something that has potential that could say, generate some return on their investment, right? I would like to know that. Am I out again? It seemed like
No, we're
I would
hearing
like to. Okay, I would like those questions answered. And if to me, the investors and the people, who are involved from the board member standpoint and from the investor standpoint, if they were happy with, they were pleased with what was going on, then I would say that they should be back on board next year to support it.
Yeah,
They should be no doubt, no, right?
yeah, but what Renford? I mean, think about it. If you are, no matter how rich you are, you're investing a few $1 million in a venture. You're looking at the numbers. I mean, whatever happens on the track, for example, for purists like ourselves here, we enjoy what happened on the track. But if you're an
Right.
investor, you're looking at the numbers. You're looking at what broadcast numbers are telling you. You're looking at what gate receipts are telling you. You're looking at what other sponsors are telling you. So those are the numbers that I think they're looking at. And if those numbers are not going to be convincing enough, maybe they might choose to opt out because right now they have thrown their millions into potentially a black hole because there's realistically there's no return coming from this year's venture. So are they willing to go again? Huh? That's a
And that's
question.
my point though.
Mm,
When you
mm.
invest in a new venture, are you gonna expect that venture to start
Returns the
to
same
start
time.
to start giving you a return
No,
on your investment?
no, but the numbers have to show that there is something there. If the numbers are showing, if the numbers are like the electrocardiogram is showing you things like this, right?
Yeah,
If,
yeah, yeah.
there's, if the numbers started like this and they ended like this,
That's dead.
you're not, yeah, you're not going back
No,
there.
my
If it's a light and it did a couple of this, you can say, okay, there's some opportunity there.
but
But if it's flatlining, hmm,
what determines whether you end the league in Kingston or in Miami or Philadelphia, or you're gonna is the trend was just going down and down and down to the point where there would be no return, so they figured they would just cancel the last leg of it. I mean,
well,
what is the determination?
But
as I'm,
as the article said, in a gentleman, remember, we don't know the real reason
mm,
either.
yeah.
We've read, I don't know about you gentlemen, but I've read so many things from last week Thursday. I have read
Mm,
so many different things, and nothing is clear. That was why I would have wanted Michael to be a little bit more transparent in giving us a little bit more, so that you don't have people speculating, because people are speculating all kind of things.
I,
And I think to protect your brand, you have to be a little bit more transparent when
transparent.
when you're addressing
right.
a situation, especially a situation like this.
Well, allow me to make a speculation, even though you just said it, right? I'm gonna, I'm gonna throw my hat in the ring as one of as one of the speculators. But I did some research before I came on, and I read a lot of the articles that you also read and you also saw, and I heard a lot of people talking, giving their perspectives and their opinions on various podcasts. What I was able to find out, what was obvious to me, what became apparent to me, let me just put it that way, is I'm thinking, this is speculation now, no facts. I'm thinking that there was more going on internally that contributed to them saying they're going to cancel the LA leg of the meet. It could be what Leighton said. It could be that they projected a loss, or if they had put that last meet on, they were going to lose. They were projected to lose $2 million. It could be that. I don't know, but again, that's speculation, because Michael Johnson has come out and said that. We haven't heard that for a fact. What I was able to determine though was that Recaton is the facility partner with Grand
Mhm.
Slam track in this series. All the tracks that they use has to be a Recaton track, a Recaton facility. Jamaica is, I think Miami is, the University of Pennsylvania, Recaton was facilitated the repair of that track. The only track that is not a Recaton track is a track at UCLA. I believe that track is a Tartan or a Mondo track. I can't remember what the article that I read. But if you then I asked myself another question. I said, okay, if because I heard the issue too about the negotiation with UCLA, and I'm saying, okay, if that was an issue, Mount Sac is right down the street. Mount Sac is a better facility than UCLA. Why not just move it to Mount Sac? But then I found out that Mount Sac is a what do you call it? Ben-on? The track at Mount Sac is a Ben-on track. Think about this. If Recaton is a partner in the series, and this,
But wouldn't they have known this from the time of
When you play,
negotiation? Right? Wouldn't they have known that
no, that
that the
no,
UCLA track is not a Recaton?
that is why. Because remember, I watched the interview with Leighton, and you can correct me on this. I watched the interview with the gentleman when they were repairing the Jamaica track, and
Mm.
he also said that they are projecting to do some repairs on the UCLA track in one of his interviews. Now, somebody can correct me on that, or go back and look up the video. He specifically said that. So they are so the plan for them. He did mention Pennsylvania. He did mention Miramar. He mentioned UCLA as the other facility that they're looking at repairing, just like they did with Kingston. They probably found out that you can't do that in a university with a university facility. Like in Jamaica, they came in, they partnered with the government, and they threw money at it, and the facility was repaired. You can't do that with UCLA. You can't
But
just walk into a college. First of all, let me finish. First of all, the track at UCLA was donated by a very wealthy couple several years ago. And that is what, and so you can't just go in and throw money at it. There is more emotional and more. Jamaica doesn't have that. There is no investor. There is no wealthy people who help build the stadium. The stadium was built for what? The Commonwealth Games or the Pan American Games, something like that, back in 1962. And the
Yes,
government
yeah, come on.
and the government has been running it since then, right? But the university, but UCLA's facility is owned by UCLA, not by the government, and it is donors' money that has been used to repair the track, and any outside investment that UCLA is going to solicit has to go through a very tedious process and have to get the approval of not only the board of trustees, and maybe they thought about all of this, maybe they didn't think about this at all.
But my question is, let me throw this question in, and I guess Leighton can take it. My question is, wouldn't the venues that you're bidding for, wouldn't you have to settle on these venues before you start promoting your event?
Yeah,
Wouldn't
because
you have to iron out all of this, that they're going to go to UCLA, they're going to go to
yeah, because they have to have contractual arrangements set in place to
right?
ensure that the venues are, first of all, guaranteed, because
Right.
then nobody could book the venue for something else in that time. So all of those things would have to be settled by some kind of contractual agreement that would allow them to start promoting that the venue is going to be the fourth venue. So while I understand what you're saying, Rainford, but the thing is that's a big loophole in terms of, why would you then go into a situation where you potentially breach a contract because of any other circumstances that might arise? Because the point you raised is solid. I mean, really, when a donor builds a facility for a university or a town or whatever it is, it's their investment, it's their legacy. You don't want anybody coming in and tarnishing it in any single way or
Right,
form.
right.
So if Rocketown had a challenge there, then it is likely or more likely that they have to find an alternative venue. So that's the only challenge we have in terms of that theory, wherein that because they would have to have those set contractually before, unless it was. I don't see it being a word of mouth thing. You'd have to have something written in black and white to establish that this is between the 27th and 29th of June, sorry, is when this meeting is going to take place there. And of course, the resulting fees and whatever, all of the other elements that needed to be involved would have been have to be set in stone before that happened. So, I don't know.
Mhm.
Before we go any further, gentlemen, this debate is on, if you're in track and field, this is the conversation that most people are having. Welcome, welcome wherever you're coming from. Good night, everyone. Good night, Carrie and Phillips. A Forbes is saying, I feel like the protest in LA might have influenced the decision as well. And again, he's saying just speculations. And this is what I did not want for Michael. I did not want us to be out there speculating, because people are speculating all kind of things. When I hear some of the conversation, I'm like, look, I don't know the details, so I'm not even going to comment on that. I really wanted him to give us a little bit more to kind of shut down the negative narratives or things that people are saying. And I hope he will see this video and say, okay, let me give a little bit more. You don't have to give us the details, but protect your brand, because I'm looking at it from that perspective, protecting the brand. Will people trust you again? Will people trust your brand when you come back next week? But gentlemen, in the short time that the Grand Slam has been around, we've seen three legs of it. How has the series impact the sport, change the sport, add to the sport?
I think it did a lot. When I spoke to after the Jamaica League, I spoke to a number, especially Jamaican athletes. Cheyenne Salmon said to me that the money she earned on the weekend was more than she earned when she ran her personal best in Rome last year.
Exactly.
Daniel Williams won 100,000 US dollars.
Right.
Akira Nugent won $200,000.
200 plus.
Yeah, so we had, and yeah, because she won nothing for 50,000 in Jamaica as well. The reality is this: for the three meets, the money earned by a lot of these athletes was life changing,
Yeah.
or at least career changing this year.
Yeah.
Megan Topper, for example, who she came away with about what 55,000 US dollars. That's about $10 million, 10 million Jamaican dollars in the space of what, a month?
A
Mhm.
month.
Who earns that? Even not a track and field athlete in Jamaica,
Exactly.
unless you're Bolt or Trinidad Fraser Price or Ian Thompson or Johan Blake. Nobody earns that kind of money. So it's a game changer, and it was helping a lot of athletes. A lot of athletes I've spoken, they were actually looking forward to be part of it. I know there were some Americans who thought, for whatever reason, they didn't want to be a part of it. That's their concern. But for a lot of the athletes who were normally not earning as much, I had to fly all over the world to come up with maybe $20,000 for the year. Grand Slam track was a significant life changer for them, right? You can now pay for your physio. You can probably improve your nutrition. You can probably pay for your proper gym, to use that proper gym or something. But it allowed a lot of athletes, especially the Jamaican athletes. Jerry Richards, for example, I was so happy when he won.
Yeah, I heard him.
Um, you know, it had the potential, or was impacting their lives and their
We can
careers in a
afford his
very
Corey,
number.
positive way.
We can
don't
afford his
forget,
number now.
don't forget about Jacore from UPS, that young
Yeah,
man.
yeah, yeah. And he got a Nike contract out of it,
Wow.
43.9. So it potentially had the opportunity, or has the opportunity, because I'm not going to assume that it's the end of it,
Yeah.
to change the trajectory of the careers of a number of athletes. I mean, and people are saying that big stars when they're from Europe. I think largely because I think the European circuit is already very jam packed with a lot of meets, and they didn't want to fly all the way across halfway across the world to do this. But when you look at the fact that um, you know the money earned allows for things to be possible. I heard Jeremy Britta says he's going to invest his money for his daughter and his family or whatever it is. These athletes, I remember there's a time, and I'm sorry if I'm going on at this too long. When the Golden League was going on, there are a lot of artists who used to make a lot more money than it is now. No, because of the shift in dynamic to the Diamond League, only a few athletes make that kind of money
Yes.
anymore.
Yes.
Right? So this was leveling the playing field in a very serious way. And I think that if it doesn't come back, it would be a travesty, because I think it would then deny a lot of athletes an opportunity to change their careers for
Mhm.
the better. If it does come back, I think it can do wonderful things for a lot of athletes.
And change their lives. I mean, you finish last in the Grand Slam. You're making as much money
As when you win the Diamond League,
yeah, as winning an event in a Diamond League meet. So having the opportunity or getting the opportunity to compete in the Grand Slam series is a tremendous opportunity for the athletes, and life changing, as Leighton said. So if it doesn't come back, it would be a real travesty
It
if
is
it
coming
didn't.
back, man. Michael said it is coming back. I have it on tape. He said it is
well,
there.
we keep our fingers crossed, huh?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
want it to come back for many, many reasons. I've never seen athletes so happy. I've never seen fans so excited at a
And
track and field
engaged.
event and engaged.
Yeah, because they're actually getting to meet the athletes
Yes,
right after their events. It was wonderful to see the interaction.
yeah,
I remember the Miramar meet. I saw a lot of my friends living in Florida. By the side of the track, reaching out to the athletes, having engagement with the athletes. And
Yeah.
it was a wonderful, for me, it was a wonderful experience to watch. And it's unfortunate that for now it seems to be tenuous, but trust me, man, I think it has the potential to be so much more
It's real.
than what it currently is.
The
Yes.
Grand Slam track, what I saw, what I got from it as well, it's the first time in a long time I have seen where athletes are happy competing.
Yeah,
They are happy competing. They're looking forward. Mind you, they're gonna get paid and it's big checks. But 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 what else should motivate you from from being happy to compete? It's your work anyways. It's what they do for a living, right? And
yeah.
as Leah said, flying to half what you know halfway across the world just to go compete in a continental gold meet, because not everybody gonna get let's face it, not everybody gonna get a lane in a diamond league meet, or a spot in
No,
throwers or jumpers. Well, they're
I mean,
throwing
you
a
make, you
being
make
thrown.
$5,000, you fly across with make
Correct.
$5,000. By the time I come back down, I mean, don't see, because by the time I pay your physio and coach, I'm done. And of course, there are people saying, oh, they weren't the big stars. I see them clocking. Ali Armstrong, Olympic champion. You
Mhm.
know, Daniel Williams, the two-time world champion. You know, Alison Dos Santos, who is a very wonderful young man. I met him for the first time
Oh,
in
yeah,
Kingston. He's
yeah.
amazing.
Amazing
Um,
guy. Yeah.
yeah, and then so there were stars there. Maybe not as many as people would have
There were
liked, but
stars.
certainly there were a number of stars there.
Listen,
So
every event brought some excitement.
yeah,
When you look at Paulino and Nasa in the 400 in the long
yeah,
distance, it was breathtaking, refreshing to see that level of competition so early in the season. I mean, Melissa Jefferson has
yeah.
no,
10,
to me,
1073.
listen to me, Melissa Jefferson can now pick up a spot in the 200 meters. I
Yeah,
think
And
Melissa Jefferson right now has
and
a spot in the 200.
hey, listen, that's a discovery that resulted from her competing in the Diamond League, right? But look at Akira Nugent. Akira Nugent can now have a leg and Jamaica 4x1 when they go to Olympics and World Championship.
Hmm.
She should be in Baton Exchange and offs. She
Yeah.
should be one of them,
Look at
in
look
the
at Akira
rotation.
Nugent. When I interviewed Akira
On the
Nugent
leg flat, right?
at the
1109 and 1112.
yeah,
Exactly.
when I interviewed Akira Nugent at the Miami Slam, she said to me, she said, "Look, now I can do another event. So if I cannot get in a meet in the hurdles, I can now get in an event in the 100 meters."
Exactly. Exactly.
So a lot of people not look breaking down the Grand Slam to see what the Grand Slam has done. The Grand Slam has taken athletes out of their comfort zone, and within the three slam they've learned another event, which to me, if they want to take it on, they can. Look at Sydney McLaughlin. Sydney
Brooklyn.
McLaughlin went to three Grand Slam in three different categories. Three different categories. Amazing, amazing, amazing. Sydney running 11.2 in a 100 meter. She was so competitive. Finished.
And look at Europe from Canada.
Look.
800-meter
Oh,
runner who
wow.
running 15s and looking better each slam. And I can tell you that running those 1500s is going to benefit him a lot
Yes.
going into Tokyo in September.
Oh yeah.
So it did a lot in terms of financial rewards. It did a lot in terms of their personal development and confidence for a lot of these athletes.
Yes.
And so it is potentially something that can have significant impact on the sport if it comes back and has a life afterwards. Because I think when you're able to put athletes, as you said, in get them out of their comfort zones and allow them to see what's possible within themselves, because a lot of athletes compete well, that and people don't understand that they too have a lot of insecurities,
Yes.
that when you're competing in an event that's not your norm and doing well at it, it tells you that it allows them to see parts of themselves that probably wouldn't have seen before.
Right.
So there's a lot of positives coming out of it, and it's something that I think should live on, and hopefully find an audience beyond the track and field
Yes.
fans alone, because I think that has potential there as well.
And that's the key right there. Right,
Indeed, indeed.
right.
When you look at Kenny Bednarek, who did not know Kenny before? No, Kenny
Hey,
now.
can I
No.
touch? I want to touch something real quick
Go
I leave
ahead.
the train of
Go
thought.
ahead. Go ahead.
With respect to, we talk about the tremendous benefits the athletes were getting from the Grand Slam track, right? The financial benefits and the fact that they have discovered, even though who didn't know themselves that they could excel in another event, the Grand Slam track brought that out in them. But you know what the Grand Slam track was also trying to do, and I heard Leighton was talking about this in one of his with the show he was having with Ricardo, and Leighton can just talk about this a little bit, but with the Noah Lyles situation, apparently he was approached by Michael Johnson to be a part of it. I don't know to what extent, right? I don't know if it's the same as Sidney McLaughlin and Gabby Thomas, what deal Michael Johnson worked out with them. But it sounds to me like, okay, so if, as Leighton had said in that program, the Grand Slam track is new. I mean, Michael Johnson don't even know if he's going to get paid when it's all said and done, because it's a new thing. Hopefully he will get some kind of benefit from it. But I think Michael Johnson is also offering the top athletes an opportunity to become investors into a league that the Diamond League doesn't offer. Right? Isn't that a part of why he wanted to do a deal with Noah Lyles, when
No,
Noah Lyles said
what he
he wasn't
what
being, his value was more than what he was being
no
offered. Leighton
no what was
can
it is that he said that what Michael was offering him as an appearance fee, I suppose, was not a portion of the value what his value was. And my argument was this, and I there's some people who took it and took it to me that I didn't like Noah Lyles. I don't know how that equated to it. What I was simply saying was this: Noah Lyles is one of the bigger names in track and field, right? And it's a new event that would help to elevate the sport. Why would you not want to be part of that? Because when the sport benefits, you also benefit. Because when you raise the profile of the sport, your appearance fee can go up because the profile of the sport is now at a different level. Not where it is now in the United States, as I mentioned before, it's way down the pecking order now, where his value is not where he thought it was. So if he helped to raise the profile of Grand Slam track,
Then his value will
then
increase.
everybody's value increased because, as I said, a rising tide raises all boats. And I said also that if you help plant and water the seed, then when the tree grows, he could benefit from the fruit. Those are the arguments that I made. So I was saying at the time that,
right.
yeah, he feels that his brand is bigger than Grand Slam track, and maybe it is. In fact, it probably is because he's world and Olympic champion. Nobody can dispute that. But if he lent his brand to Grand Slam track, notwithstanding the fact that they weren't able to pay him what he wants, then eventually over time, he could say, okay, because I've come on board and helped you raise the profile, I need to get some equity in Grand Slam track, which he then could benefit from. So, but
Over
you see,
time.
yeah, over time, because once you help to grow the thing, then you can negotiate for equity, right? That's all I'm saying. And people are saying that I'm hitting no. I don't know how you quit. People,
Because they don't get the concept, they don't get
no,
the business side of this thing. You're
yeah,
investing in yourself, you know?
yeah, track and field is an individual sport, and I understand
Yeah,
all of that. But in
Right.
helping to grow the sport on a whole, so that all athletes can benefit from it,
benefit.
or more athletes can
Right.
benefit it. Help to do
Right.
something to raise the profile of it. I'm sure if Noah Lyles was
Right.
competing in Grand Slam track, they'd have probably had a few more views, thousand views, a few 100,000 more views on the broadcast channels. And then they could actually have, okay, friend, come on, some more money for broadcast rights, etc., etc. And he would benefit from that as well. So it's about partnerships, and strategic partnerships I find would help in this circumstance. And that's all I was saying. That if we said, okay, let's sit down and say, okay, Michael, you're the deal. I will come on board for what you're offering me now. But the contingency is
Yeah.
if we raise the value of this event by X, I get X,
Yes.
a portion of that X over a period of time. And then so the Grand Slam track would benefit, he would benefit,
Other
right? But
athletes
it's
will benefit
other
also.
athletes would benefit. So it's a simple thing. I'm not disputing his brand or his brand value. What I'm saying is that he could use that value
No,
to
yeah,
bring further
yeah.
value to the sport.
And that is why an athlete like Sydney McLaughlin will be respected because she didn't have to be there either.
No,
Because for me, Sydney is one of the biggest thing in track and field, one of the most accomplished right now in the sport. You know, world
yep,
record, Olympic champion, world
world
champion,
champ
you name
many
it.
times over,
Yeah,
right?
many
She's
times.
she's a goat.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So
right. No, she's the biggest thing. So,
yeah,
but when
We
you
understand.
understand the
Yes.
assignment, it's different from when you don't understand the assignment. But
But the
gentlemen,
question Noah is asked
go ahead.
when it was posed to him, when it was posed to him, he actually asked the question, have you ever heard of Grand Slam track? I guess he asked the host, and the host said no. And he said, see, I made my point. Well, you don't make a damn point, so pardon my language. But when Microsoft first started, if Bill Gates had come to me and said, you know, have you ever heard of Microsoft?
no,
I would
you
have
would
said
not heard about
no.
it either.
Yeah, exactly. But look at them now. So that is what I don't know. It's to me, it's just mind-boggling that you can ask a question like that because you're trying to make a point that the series is not popular enough yet, right?
It
But
is new. The
I can
series
tell
is
they popular.
new. The series
It's
is,
new.
oh my God.
It's new. And that's
When
the
you
point
don't,
Lady was making on his
yeah.
program.
Yeah, when you don't understand, you just don't understand. But before I go to my next question, someone is asking, Gary Wright, welcome. He's saying, could the Kingston leg of the meet get scrapped due to low attendance?
That's possible. When you're picking a venue for an event, you're looking at fan engagement. You're looking at the energy that surrounds the event. And if there is no energy around an event, there's no reason for you to be there. They've invested heavily in Jamaica now. They spent $450,000 helping to resurface the stadium track. And they did some other things as well. The thing about it is, if Jamaican fans don't turn out for an event, why would you then come back and host it there again? It makes no sense. You're shooting yourself in the foot. There are other venues that you could find where the fan engagement will be much better. Because Grandstand alone is what, just under what, that was 4,000 people, I think. There's
Hmm.
35,000 seats here. If 20,000 people had turned out on Friday or Saturday, I think the dynamic would have been different. But that wasn't the case. And on the Saturday, the only reason why a lot of people, more people turned out was because the tickets were free. So it would take something significant in terms. Well, a big part of the problem as well with Jamaica's thing as well is that they did a fantastic job of promoting the meet on social media, but they didn't do a great job on the ground. If they had done a better job on the ground in Jamaica, I think more people would have turned out. Because I remember I was standing up in front of the police station in front of Industrial Boulevard. I think there was an assignment at Pegasus that I had, and I'd taken an Uber, and I came off in New Kingston because I wanted to get some cash on the money machine. And I asked somebody, I hear some people talking about something, and people sitting there asking me questions all the time. And somebody mentioned something about Grand Slam truck, and they were saying, "What is it?" So I took some time to explain what it was. Them said, "Who running?" So I told them Sidney McLaughlin and some other people, and I mentioned some of the Jamaicans that were competing. But they didn't seem particularly interested at the time because I don't think there was enough information on the ground.
Yeah.
Because the social media engagement was fantastic. You can't complain about the social media engagement, but on the ground, I think they could have done a better job on the ground. They did a better job on the ground in Jamaica, in Kingston, in like the week or two leading up to April 4th to 6th. I think more people would have come to the stadium because they probably would have made arrangements to come. Because on a Friday in Kingston, it's crazy. Traffic is madness. The meet started at 5:30. If you leave work at 4:30 on a Friday evening in Kingston, you're not getting anywhere by 6 o'clock, before 6 o'clock or 6:30. A friend of mine actually said that there was a parking facility down by Hero Circle, and they took a shuttle back to the stadium. And by the time they got back to the stadium, the meet was almost done. So
Wow.
you see, there are some logistical things that I don't think they took into consideration as much, and I
Mhm.
think it cost them in terms of the fan engagement. And as a result, the crowd on Saturday wasn't particularly greater, not much greater, but it's only greater because they
The
announced that the tickets
for
were going to be
free.
free.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Athletes
And they did learn
are.
from that. They did learn from some of those for the next meet and the next meet and the next meet. So, if it was to go back to Jamaica, next year, they know you do it on a Friday and a Saturday night. You cut out the Sunday. I mean, they've already made that fix because it becomes it's now a 2-day event as opposed to a 3-day
Yeah,
event,
the
right?
broadcast times I think will be determined by the broadcasters as well, which is a challenge because if they can't find that window to fit it in at a time that is compatible to what, like for example, a Regional Grand Prix starts at 6:30 in the evening, which is a more appropriate time. But they're on CW and a couple of stations in Europe and TNT. Do they have that window available on those networks? That's a challenge, and that's a challenge that they face. There are a lot of logistical challenges that they would have faced in terms of the meet in Jamaica for the first time. But the key thing is that they would have to convince the networks that this is the time that is best suited for in Jamaica, and see if they'll be willing to accommodate in that window, because I'm sure that when they went to because the product is new, they'll probably gone to the broadcast and said, listen, this is the time, and they'll probably say this is the window that we can offer you. And because we're transmitted to 189 countries, then it has to fit into a window that works best for those countries as well.
For a lot of
Because, for
people.
example, yeah, because 5 o'clock in Jamaica is early morning in Japan. People are getting ready for work on a Friday
Mhm.
or Saturday morning, wherever it is. So there was a lot of things to consider in terms of the time slot that was considered. It just didn't work for Jamaica.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. But athletes are, thanking Michael. They're praising the whole Grand Slam thingy. What are some of the things that the sport need to take away from the Grand Slam series going forward?
Greater fan engagement, more
Yeah.
head-to-head clashes.
Yeah.
Um, One of the things that's hurt track and field over the past few years, other than the fallout for the doping issues that hit US track back in the late 1990s, early 2000s, is that I don't know if Brentford is old enough to remember, but when Don Quarry and Steve Williams and Steve Rick and Steve Leonard and guys, they used to race almost every week against each other.
They grew up on
They
those
race
guys.
each other. Yeah, they race each other every single week. Now, what you're seeing is that, for example, that Noah Lyles or Usain Bolt or Asafa Paul, when they're running a meet, it was like them alone and against some average athletes. Nobody wants to see that because it's not pitting the best against the best, which is the mantra that Michael came with, pitting the best against the best. What's happened over the years is that because of things like high appearance fees and whatever it is, the meet organizers in Europe, for example, I remember talking to one of them a few years ago. So he had a budget of $3 million for the meet, right? Out of that, you're paying maybe three or four athletes $250,000 each for appearance fees. So therefore, what you end up with has to spread for the rest of the athletes in the meet. Okay? You pay from first to eighth, and you have to make that money spread. But there was a time when appearance fees were not such a big deal. Not to say that we must get rid of appearance fees, but the idea was to come in and have the best versus the best on a weekly basis. And unfortunately, is a patriarchal thing as well, because if you check the women, for example, Shelly used to race against the best women in the world consistently all the time. Unfortunately, the women, for some reason, people don't like seeing the women race as much as the men do. So what I would say is that if they get more engagement from some of the best male athletes, for example, if they had a Kelly Begnaret against a Noah Lyles, and I mean,
Shane Thompson.
and Thompson, yeah, the guys who would make it a lot more engaging in terms of the battles, the head-to-heads, that would probably do a lot better. It would do a lot better in terms of the engagement, both on broadcast and on the at the site itself, because I think that's what people want to see, especially One coming out to the Olympics where Noah Lyles beat Kishan by 0.05 seconds. People would love to see a rematch at Grand Slam track over the 100 and the 200, knowing that Noah will most likely win the 200. But the thing is that Kishan doesn't run the 200. But Kishan will probably, on a better day, win the 100. So you don't know. So that's the kind of mystery and engagement that would bring fans into the stadium to see. And then you would bring in Shakara Richardson and have her against Sharika
Julian
Jackson
or a Julian
or
Fred.
Julia Alfred or something like that. But unfortunately, those athletes were not part of the effort of a reason. So if they could get them engaged and have them come into the matchups on those different meets, I think the fans will turn out to see that because that's what people want to see, the best against the best
Right.
all the time. So that's one thing that I think could be better. I mean, not that the engagements that we saw were bad. I mean, when you saw the 100 in Kingston, it was very close. The Miramar was a lot closer as well, with Kenny ran 9.7 and Oblique ran 9.8 and Akeem ran 9.85. That was the kind of thing that people want to see more often. And with the bigger names, the people who have accomplished a lot more. And so I think that's one key thing that I think Michael could possibly address with that. And of course, they what I think they do prior to the meets and during the 2 days is fantastic, where they have the athletes do the interview sessions with the media and maybe more direct impact and direct contact with the fans off-site. Not on the track, but certainly off-site. Maybe sign a few autographs, maybe
They
sign
had
some
that.
merchandise.
They had that in Miami. They had
And
that.
yeah, I know they do. Yeah. So more of that, and of course, more head-to-heads with
Yeah.
the very best and the very best. I think would help to bring more fans into the stadium, and of course, certainly bring more views on the broadcast networks.
I was doing some research recently, and I was trying to figure out the sports that are paid the high money or the lowest, and this was what I came up with. It says track and field is one of the most underpaid elite sports,
Mm-hmm.
especially when compared to the time, discipline, and physical risk athletes invest. It is not the absolute lowest paid, but under rewarded for its global talent pool. Listen to this
Mm-hmm.
now. It says particularly in the Caribbean, Africa, and smaller federation. Why is that, Leighton?
It's because corporates and the sponsors and well, not the shoe companies send athletes who they want to sign. But I don't think people, for some reason, are not connecting enough with what you see. It's because everybody can run. People underestimate what it is to run 110 seconds flat. They think you can get up and do it. We see this clown in the United States called high speed thinking he can beat Noah Lyles. That's the kind of thinking that people think about track and field. So they don't put much value to what the athletes are able to do. I remember a few years ago, NFL athletes thought he could beat Usain Bolt. And then I think he went to, was it Beijing or Berlin? And when Bolt was jogging the 100, he was killing up himself behind, not understanding that track and field speed is completely different from any other speed that you can experience. But because everybody can run and everybody can jump, they think that they don't put as much value on it as they do perhaps basketball. We have to shoot a ball through a hoop from whatever distance, or NFL, where it's more systematic than anything else. So I think people don't value track and field in the same way they value other sports because they don't see it as a specialized skill set because everybody can do it, but not understanding that the very best there's a reason why the very best are the very best and the fastest and the jump. Like for example, um, Paul Watts who just broke the world record again, the 6:28 on Sunday.
Duplantis, he's
The Francis. How many people in the world, regardless of the sport, can do that? But they don't value it the same way that you value other sports. It's one of the reasons why track and field is so low. And the other thing is there's just economies of scale of the thing. For a lot of elite sports like the NFL and NBA, you have a few hundred players playing. When you go to World Championships or Olympics, you're talking about thousands of athletes. So to be able to pay those thousands of athletes, whatever pool of revenue you might have, has to spread against the pool of thousands of athletes, 10,000 athletes, as opposed to 500 or to 1,000. In the NFL, it's like probably 3,000 players. It's what, 58 players per roster, 30 teams, you know the math, maybe 3,000 players.
Wow.
So where other sports have a smaller set of elite athletes, track and field has a very broad set of athletes. So the money just can't, the value of it is spread across a broader number of athletes.
How do we strike the balance? How do we find a balance?
Well,
You have to, well, go ahead, Rainford.
no, I was just going to say, in addition to that, I don't think I don't know who, well, I know who to hold responsible, but I don't want to put anybody on the spot. But the athletes are not marketed properly. You
True.
know, you look at Tiger Woods. I was looking at LeBron James, Tiger Woods, and some of these elite athletes. You know the pecking order of how Tiger Woods earn his revenues. The PGA Tour is about fourth or fifth on the list. I was looking at the list, right? Endorsements, sponsorships, a whole bunch of stuff came before the PGA Tour,
Mhm.
the on the PGA Tour. Same thing with LeBron James. The NBA doesn't pay LeBron $1 billion a year. He earn a salary, but he have a big Nike shoe contract and him have other endorsement deals, and they do special things. They do other things. Their agents and the people who are they have marketing, representatives who knows how to package those athletes. You understand? And maximize, their earnings based on their accomplishments and based on their visibility.
Mhm.
Right? That's a term I like to use. Right? Which track and field athletes you see? Shakari, Noah, every once in a while you may see them. Who else do you see in advertisement? And you turn on your TV every day, you say, Shaquille O'Neal full up my TV. Even though I'm retired, I'm still I make more money than everybody else.
Yeah, that's a good point that you raised because one of the things that I've always said about Jamaica, especially Jamaican athletes,
Yeah.
they don't do interviews, they don't make themselves interesting.
Mm-hmm.
They hide away from the media all the time because they see the media as some kind of enemy and not understanding that you can use the media platform to improve and increase your brand visibility. So
Yes, very
therefore, you might not be able to, because Rainbow just said it. LeBron might make LeBron might make $50 million for his salary playing for the LA Lakers, but he makes 10 times that from endorsements.
Per year.
Similarly, yeah, per year,
Yeah.
Shaquille O'Neal, similarly. So if the athletes would be more aware and make themselves presentable to corporates, they could make more money off the track than they make on the track. But unfortunately, like, I will tell you a story. Back in early 2000, before Jamaica really blew up in the way they did back in 2008, the principal or the president of UTEC and I had a conversation where he had arranged for some of the top athletes at the time to go over to UAE, over to Caravan to do speech sessions and voice sessions and how to communicate effectively. None of them went.
say that
None of
again.
them went.
Say that again, Leighton. Please say that again.
Right? So his idea was that if they were able to communicate effectively and
Wow.
make themselves more engaging to an audience, they could be bigger than they currently are. And none of them went. Right? But when you look at the reason why Chilean Fraser Price is as big as she is now globally. When you look at Usain Bolt, charisma and the ability to communicate up,
Yes.
in an effective and engaging way. And that's why they do as well as they do. Some of the others, they see you coming to do an interview to talk a little bit about they have
And
nothing.
they brush you off. They're like, no,
Yeah,
yeah, I don't do
yeah, yeah,
interviews.
yeah, yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, I've
I,
been.
I spoke to one athlete on the weekend. I won't call it because I don't want to put anybody on
No,
the spot
don't
again.
talk. No, don't
And I
talk.
and I and I said to her, "Hey, what's going on with you? Can you give me 2 minutes?" And her words were, "Me don't have nothing to say."
Wow.
So I said, "Okay, fine. I'm
I
moving right along."
When I was at the Miami Slam, we I don't know if you know how it is set up, Leighton, but they have a section for the media and
Mhm.
all the athletes. should pass through there,
through
and
there.
then
Yeah.
you interview who you want to interview. And let me tell you, every athlete comes through except the only athletes who did not, who shy away from the media section were some Jamaican athletes. They
Yeah.
walk around the other
Mm-hmm.
side because they did not want to give us the interviews. And I'm like,
Mm.
these people realize that we're doing them a favor. We're putting them out there. Visibility is very important to
Mm.
sponsors.
Yeah. But
A person is not going to sponsor you to stay behind the scene.
Yeah,
no, and nobody knows who you are.
here's,
No.
here's another interesting point, and I was doing some research the other day to Leighton, and I how many of our Jamaica athletes wants to make themselves available to run in CSC games and Pan American games and
Mm.
no matter of fact, not even Commonwealth games these days. Commonwealth big games.
Yep.
You know nowadays, Leighton, when we watch Donald Corey and
Yep. Yep.
those guys, Commonwealth games was a big deal back then, and it is
Mm.
today. But you wouldn't think that it's a big deal today because with the athletics stuff that is going on, the Commonwealth Games has taken kind of a backseat. But here's my point, though: a athlete would rather, from what I can see, they would rather go run at a no-name meet in Atlanta somewhere, or in Miami somewhere, or in LA somewhere where I live, than to make themselves available to represent their country at the Pan
Mm.
American.
Because the country is not paying them.
The country is not paying them, but the meet in Atlanta, Miami, and stuff is paying them.
It's paying them.
Is giving them what a couple $100 or
But
maybe.
what they don't understand, when you compete for a country, it does more for you than when you go out there and compete at
Yeah,
a
but
private meet.
and that kind of summarize the point I was going to finish making, that you compete for your country at the Pan American Games. I did the research. The last Pan American Games, right? The viewing audience was 200 million. That's across all sports. 200
Mm.
million. But as we know, track and field is always the primary thing in any of these competition, whether it's the Olympics or the Pan American Games or the whatever it is. But if you are going to have a viewing audience of $200 million to represent your country, out of 200 million people, why would you then not make yourself available to run for your country, but to make yourself available to go run at a little meeting down in Atlanta that has no viewing audience? That don't
But
make
let,
sense.
but let me ask Leighton something. Leighton, how do we get our athletes to understand that branding is very important, and important in the sense where you have to be visible? You must be able to tell a story. Storytelling is very, very important. The sport is changing, the sport is evolving, everything is evolving. You have to be visible. Sponsors need to know that you're. How can we get our athletes, our young and upcoming athletes who are now just stepping into this industry that is one of the lowest paid, to understand that they have to market themselves as a brand, because that is how you will get paid.
All right. So I'm going to start with something that's going to be a little bit controversial. First thing that needs to happen is that they need to stop signing contracts straight out of high school, because then the hunger goes away and the understanding. Because look, if you come from an impoverished background, for example, and somebody puts a little measly contract that says 100,000 US dollars in front of you, you're going to jump at it, right? Because you've never seen that much money in your life before. But
Yeah,
what that does, it takes away the edge from what you're able to do, because all of a sudden you become comfortable.
yeah.
Huh? You go from being desperate to comfortable in a short window of time. So you don't think those things are important anymore. What needs to happen also is that if you're going to, and this is where I think the GSPs can do a better job of this. If an athlete, for example, I want to speak specifically about Jamaica. If you're going to go pro, I think the GSPA should have these sessions where you sit down with advisors. Like a little, what do you call these sessions? Like a
Like a seminar or something?
Seminar, right? Yeah, that's the word I'm looking for. Seminar, where you learn a little bit of financial
Yes.
prudence. You learn a little bit of marketing. You learn media. You get media training and stuff like that to prepare you for the environment in which you're going to be competing. So by the time you get there, it becomes a little bit less awkward for you. Like when you go to the Olympics and somebody sticks a microphone in your face and asks you a question, your first reaction is not to flinch or show a bad face, or like I saw an athlete do a few years ago, cuss out the interviewer when they asked a question that the athlete took personally and not understanding what the question was trying to accomplish. The person was asking a simple question that the athlete took and well, interpreted differently. So
Mm-hmm.
all of these things can be done. So you sign a contract and you say, okay, listen, all of you kids, we need to be having a seminar every 6 weeks, for example. And these are some of the things that we're going to be teaching you. And you have them, the NFL does it, the NBA does it, all the professional sports in the United States do it, where the youngsters coming in signing contracts are go to these sessions where they're exposed to the things that put them at risk. They're exposed to the things that gives them an opportunity to invest their money better and not just buy a big car where they get the first contract and then you're broke after that. And of course, media training, how to answer simple questions at interviews, how to handle interviews and the media in general, so as not to come off like you're an idiot. And so, those are some of the things that need to happen and need to happen consistently. Because especially nowadays where it seems as if the athletes are signing contracts earlier and earlier and earlier. There's a time where the companies used to wait until at least you finish halfway through college before you're signing a contract. No, they're signing them straight out of high school,
Straight out of
right?
high
Some of them can't even read properly coming out of high school. And they're signing these contracts and not understanding how to
school.
manage that wealth, how to manage the idea and the responsibility that is required of you from your sponsor. And as a result, you end up losing your contract after a period of time because you think sign a contract and you disappear. That's not what you're signing your contract
And
for. They're signing your contract.
you sign a contract and then you're not available when
Yeah,
your sponsor wants
needs
you
you.
for
Yeah.
an engagement. But let me tell you a little story. I interviewed Melaine Walker, I think it was 2 3 weeks ago, and Melaine Walker said to me that she's not really a talker back in the early days. And she said when she realized that she was going to make a career out of this thing and the microphone was going to come in front of her, she made a conscious effort
Effort.
to learn to talk to the media because they were going to come. And she did not want to look stupid. That was
Yeah.
what Melaine Walker said. She said, look, I never want to look stupid, so I make sure I learn to open my mouth because if you're winning at the Olympic Games, who is not going to put a microphone in front of your face?
Yeah, and if you have interesting stories to tell, you might attract a sponsor that's completely divorced from track and field, because
Yes.
you represent something that is valuable to them.
Yeah.
But they don't see that way. You go to them and you say, okay, can I ask you a question? No, I'm not
No.
doing any interviews today.
Yeah, I don't do interviews. I'm like,
Yeah, I mean, like
wow.
seriously, I've
Yeah.
always found it interesting that it's easier to
Mhm.
interview an athlete from the United States, from the United
Yes,
Kingdom, as
yes,
opposed to interviewing an athlete from the Caribbean. But
hmm
I'm
Yeah,
more so Jamaica. But I find that, to be honest, outside of Jamaica, I find it a lot easier to interview athletes from the Caribbean as well.
Yeah, yeah. Me
because
too.
Yeah,
those athletes who went through the NCAA system, they have microphone thrown in their face every week
exactly.
because the medias are always there. You
Yep.
understand? So it's something they have become, familiar with. But there's
We have to help our athletes though. As Leighton said, we have to start having seminars, workshops to teach them because maybe they don't know. They grew up they grew up shy, and not outspoken in Jamaica. When I was growing up as a little girl in the 80s, my grandmother used to say, "Speak when you're spoken to."
Yeah.
I was not always this outspoken. I grew up very shy, but it was when I got into my early 20s, I'm like, no, I can't be like this. I can't just walk around being shy and you walk in a room and I am at the back. And no, you either have to teach yourself or
Yeah,
somebody else have a system to teach
it's
you.
a cultural it's a cultural thing, and then they're also not taught to think for themselves. If you speak to an average kid out of the high school these days, there are notable exceptions, I must say. When the average kid, the first thing they say to you, "Oh, sir, I just do what my coach tell me to do." How is that? How is that in any way engaging? You
Yeah.
know, it's boring. It's just flat. So, like for example, I remember when I used to cover some of the high school meets. After a while, I stopped doing it because there was no value to asking anything after a race because they're not going to give you anything that is going to add any value to the story that you're right. And similarly, brands look at it the same way. If you're not bringing anything that they see as a potential value, they're not going to be interested in you either. So a lot of these athletes they earn not a small contract, which in more instances than one, they abuse because they think that the first thing that they must do is buy a big fancy car and drive up and down the place like an idiot, as opposed to saying, okay, what can I do to invest this money? Because track and field won't last forever.
Because they don't know Leighton. They
Yeah, that's
don't
what I'm saying. So
yeah.
that's what I'm saying. So what
Hmm.
I'm saying is that if they are then now exposed to what these realities are,
Yeah.
then maybe they'll have a different approach to things. So that's where I think the J3 is. And of course, I think schools can be involved there. You have a cadre athletes, for example,
But
who are representing you.
the clubs can do it too, Leighton. The
Yeah,
clubs
the clubs can do it too.
yeah, the
It
club
can be done. It can be done at all levels. But
yeah.
unfortunately, that doesn't seem to be the primary focus of any of these institutions. Because if I was look, we and I we grew up at that time when we had to learn to speak English or some form of it. Right? A lot of these kids nowadays can't put a sentence together,
True.
right? Which is unfortunate coming out of high school where they can't put a sentence together, right? I found it interesting that there's some kids I used to interview here at Chance, and they went to college abroad, and within 2 years, they were completely different people in terms of their ability to
That
communicate.
is why I like the collegiate system because, as Karen Stewart says, the collegiate system prepares you for
For
pro level, for
yeah,
the next level. Mhm.
yeah. So when I see people say, "Oh no, you're not going to college, 'cause college burn you." College, I've done some burning affairs already, done some research on it, especially in the last 2 years. There's this theory that a lot of Jamaicans buy into that U.S. colleges burn athletes out. You know what the
Nonsense.
reality? You know what the reality is? High schools burn the athletes out from here, so college gets the last of them. The other thing is this: when you see a young athlete, for example, and people have spoken about this, some physiotherapists and physical therapists have spoken about this. We are training, a lot of our coaches are training our high school kids that are professional athletes. That's not I remember talking to Jura Levy, who told me when she was at Oklahoma. The training that she had at Oklahoma was nowhere close to what
Nothing
she was getting
compared
at
to
there,
China. Yeah. Hmm.
right? So when people talk about U.S. colleges burning out athletes, it's rubbish. And if that was the case, what happened to Veronica Campbell Brown, Merlin Otley, Raymond Stewart, Davian Clark? The list goes on and on and on and
Juliet
on. They went to
Cuthbert,
college.
all
Juliet Cuthbert, Juliet
Janet
Campbell, all
Jackson.
of them went to college. So
Mhm.
why weren't they burnt out?
Elite
You
Hodges,
see,
Dark Scott,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, you name them,
Donald,
Gregory
Donald,
Harden,
Donald
all of them.
Quarry, Donald Quarry, Otto
Yeah.
Bolden,
Yep,
Herb
Herb
McKinley.
McKinley,
Yeah.
Arthur Wing, George Roden, all
Hmm.
of them went to colleges. I mean,
Justin,
Arthur went to school.
Justin Gatlin,
That
Tommy
Tyson
McDonough,
did, right? All
Tyson
of them
Beard,
went to college. So why aren't
Aaron
they burnt
Paul.
out?
Yeah,
Why
they
It's
aren't
all went to college.
the Americans burnt out?
exactly. It's the most ridiculous
I read an
thing I've
article
ever
not
heard.
no, it's not. I hear it all the time to Leon, and
Yeah, I heard it
it's
all the
nonsense.
time.
I read an article recently, not well about a year ago, and it says 80% of the athletes them who won medal, American athletes who won medals at the Olympics went through the NCAA system.
Yeah,
80%, 80%.
yeah. But you want to hear something else? You want to hear another frightening statistic? Of the number of star athletes who go through champs, 1 to 3% of them actually go on to have successful athletic careers.
Wow.
Right? So the reality is that we fall into these traps of believing theories that have been unproven. without thinking about what it actually is. And that's a big part of the problem. Colleges don't burn anybody out. Yeah, yeah, you race up. I mean, you're racing week out, week in, week out. But the thing about it is that the 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 idea that those races are what are killing you, it doesn't wash because there's more than ample evidence that it does not impact. If it does not impact the American athletes, why is it that it doesn't impact the American athletes? Because their high
Yeah,
school systems don't push the kids as hard as we
True.
push our kids here.
yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes, exactly. There you go.
Exactly.
That
Exactly.
you
There
put
you
you
go.
put your finger right on the head.
You hit the nail right on the head. The American high school system, they don't push their athletes. Their athletes, to me, their athletes haven't started until they get to college.
No, and that's why we dominate federal leagues and such every year because we are treating our kids like they're professional athletes. So they're up against these kids who are not doing half the work that our athletes are doing. And we go there, we dominate, and we are proud of it. And yeah, we're proud of it because we're winning, yes. But at the same time, on the long run, the American kids do a lot better than ours do.
Yeah.
And then in truth is that there's another factor that we're not taking into consideration as well. That the bulk of the kids that get scholarships to the United States have no interest in going on to the Olympics or World Championships. They just want a degree,
Yeah.
get a job in the United States, and break the cycle of poverty, that the life that they're coming from. I did something empirical on that for about 10 years, where each year I spoke to at least 10 athletes from here who went to college in the United States. And each year, at minimum, seven of those athletes have said they have no interest in going on to the Olympics or World Championship. There's
Yeah.
one a degree. I remember talking to this girl. That she went to Homewood. Very good jump. And I remember talking to her after she finished college. And I said to her, "What's your way of doing now?" She said, "Sir, I'm going to go my master's degree and get a job or start a business."
Mm-hmm.
They have no interest in
Yeah.
wherever we think
Yeah,
they should be interested in because that's not where their motivations are.
yeah. When I grew up in Jamaica, Lane, I had an opportunity. Dennis Johnson, DJ, talked to me about
Yeah, my
attend,
coach. Yeah.
yeah, attending CAS, right? Because I was very close with that, with them. And I had gotten a scholarship to attend, university over here. I went to Grambling State University, and Dennis Johnson wanted me to stay in Jamaica. And the bigger picture for me and the vision that I had was, for me, I put it on myself to use my talent to help my family get out of the situation that they were in. As a lot of us athletes, deal with when
Mhm.
you're in Jamaica. You grew up in a third world country. Things are, you're gonna struggle. So when we get the opportunity to go abroad, we tend to, we jump on it, right? Because we're looking at the bigger picture, and we
Mhm.
see athletes before us who have gone overseas, and maybe they didn't win an Olympic medal or whatever the case may be, but they end up graduating with a college degree and end up
Mm-hmm.
getting good jobs afterwards. And then
And are extremely wealthy right now.
Oh
yes,
yes.
yes, doing really well, but they were also able to help their families to come to America. My parents,
Mhm.
are here. Well, my father died now, but my mother is still alive and kicking. But that was my vision, when the opportunity was offered to me, because I look at it more of in that sense, right? It's not just about, and most Jamaican athletes, that and when I get an opportunity to talk to college coaches up here, to them is, don't just recruit Jamaican athletes or Caribbean athletes because they tend to do better, right? That's not the only reason you should recruit them. But the reason why the Caribbean athletes do well when they come to the United States is because they are motivated to do well.
Mhm.
There are other factors that they're thinking, right? That motivates them. When I was in college, my family member used to call me asking me to send money come get them in Jamaica. I couldn't afford it
Mhm.
at the time because I was still in college. But the fact of the matter is that the college coaches them like, they prefer, I won't say prefer, some do, some don't. But when you recruit the Caribbean athletes, you don't have to do much to sell them to do well for your program.
Yes. No.
They already know what they need to do, and it has nothing to do with your university. Sorry, unfortunately, it has more to do with them.
What they want out of it. What they want out of it.
Yes, the American athletes them don't face that. They don't deal with that.
But you know, in wrapping up shortly though, we really need to continue, you know, these conversations, how we can help, how we can educate our young and upcoming athletes, because sadly a lot of them, they're clueless about what they're supposed to do. They don't have a clue. Somebody come to them and say, oh, we want to sponsor you. Yes sir, yes sir, yes ma'am. They don't have a clue. They don't know the first thing to do. So we have to have these conversations. We need to have workshops, seminars to educate them, so that when they go out there, they can make informed decisions that will help them in the long run. In closing, gentlemen, when you look back at the Grand Slam, what the Grand Slam did this year, when you look back at the Grand Slam track series, you know, the three staging, you know, and stuff, what would you say is your biggest takeaway from the Grand Slam?
That it potentially has the ability to change the lives of a lot of athletes and their families. That's what I saw.
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah, I completely agree with that, and I think some of our athletes are missing, you know, the boat if they didn't get on board. And I mean, we're not here then endorsing Grand Slam track or supporting it, because we're not we're not paid by Grand Slam or anything like that. But you know, just based on the conversations that we have had and talk on all the benefits that we have had, there's so many things. You know, it helped the athletes
Oh
discover
shit.
other talent.
But you did.
Oh wow.
What I'm saying, Leighton, well, it practically died at the right time, because we're about to wrap up.
Yeah.
Okay, so Leighton is having some issues there. I think his battery died or something. Go ahead, Scouty, make your final point.
No, I was just saying that it is the Grand Slam, you know, league has definitely brought out some discoveries in some of the athletes that they themselves probably weren't aware that they had potential, that they had, right? You say, you know, Akira Nugent says she could now get into meets, you know, on the diamond hurdles, you know, she can, you know, go around 100 or something. Be considered for a leg in the Jamaica, you know, really a pool. You know, when they go to, you know, to these international meets, you know, you run 11 flat. Of course, you should be able to. You should be considered. But it helps, you know, with the money, with the prize structure that Michael Johnson came up with. You know, he's trying to help the sport grow in a number of different ways, but he's also trying to help the athletes earn.
Yeah.
And the Grand Slam track definitely solve, you know, that problem, you know, as well, if we can maintain it. So there are many benefits, you know, to the Grand Slam track, and we hope that it comes back bigger and better, you know, next year. And Michael
Yes, I
Johnson
hope
is in.
so too. Yeah, I really hope so too. And what I would love for Michael to do is give us a little bit more, put a little bit more out there why
Yeah.
LA was canceled. So as a damage control to, you know, to protect the brand and not have people losing, you know, interest in
Right.
it and stuff. I would love for him to give us a little bit more, because while some of us will speculate in a nice way, there are others who will rip you apart in their opinion and speculations. And this is, I would love to see this come back. And of course, he said it in addressing us that they will be coming back bigger and better in 2026, and I cannot wait to see that. So that's our 2 cents, guys, on the cancellation of the Grand Slam. You know, we hope to see Grand Slam in 2026. So with that said, thank you all for being here tonight. Everyone who tuned in from Africa, South America, North America, Asia, Antarctica, Oceanic, Europe, all 7 continents. Thank you for being here. And Kevin Clark was here. Thank you very much for your input. Track Hero was saying, Shelly, Usain, Veronica, Merlene, Sharon, and a lot of Jamaican Olympic medalists won individual gold at champs. But some of the names that he named there did not win gold at champs. You know, as good as they turn out to be now, they did not win gold at champs. But I get what he is saying. So Scouty, thank you very much for being here, and please to thank Leighton Levy for me. I really wanted to hear his closing remark, but unfortunately, I won't be hearing that, or we won't be hearing that. So, Scotty, thank you very much for being here, and have a good night, sir.
Yeah, man. All right. Thanks for having me, man. And
You're welcome.
we'll talk. Okay. Take care.
Okay. Bye-bye.
All right.
Guys, thank you very much. Thank you for, you know, for being here. Just to talk about the Grand Slam a little bit. Of course, we all know that the Grand Slam for LA, it has been canceled. Yes, it is canceled. No more Grand Slam until 2026. So that was just us, you know, adding our 2 cents, just looking at the series and, you know, some of the reasons why it, you know, it would have been canceled. So thank you all for being here, and I will be back here tonight. Okay, so Track Hero is asking me who did not win gold at champs. Shelly Ann did not win gold at champs. Track Hero, and I'm trying to remember if Sharon did. I don't think that Sharon won gold at champs either, but if I'm wrong, I'll stand corrected. I know that Usain won gold, Veronica won gold, and Merlene, but I don't even remember if Merlene. I'm not sure how Merlene's champs career went, because, you know, she was a little bit before, but yes. So thank you guys for being here. Okay, so Track Hero is saying Shelly won gold class 2 100 at champs. So I stand corrected. I stand corrected. Sorry for that, Shelly Ann. I heard that you won gold in class 2. I can't remember, to be honest. I cannot remember, because I remember that Shelly Ann was actually in the shadows of Anisha McLaughlin and Simone Facey. But thank you very much for that information, Track Hero. So thank you, guys. I'll be back here tomorrow. I will be back here tomorrow. Please to check that for me, JW, because I don't remember. I'm going to be honest, I don't remember Shelly winning gold at champs, but if she did, she did. So that's something we can check, but honestly, I don't remember. So I stand corrected. So guys, thank you very much, and I will see you tomorrow night when the Caribbean unite. And of course, we're going to be talking about track and field tomorrow night. The middle and long distance, why is it not improving in the Caribbean region? I should have Trinidad and Tobago in the house, and also the Bahamas. I'm not sure who else will join us, but I'll be back here tomorrow with my Caribbean neighbors to talk about the middle and long distance program in the Caribbean. Why are we so far behind? So I bid you good night. I bid you good morning. I bid you good evening, wherever in the world you are coming from. I bid you farewell until tomorrow night, where we will talk about the middle and long distance in the Caribbean. So remember, guys, please to join us tomorrow night, okay? Have a good, I was going to say have a great weekend, because I'm generally here on a Thursday and it is actually Monday night. So it's too early to say have a great weekend. So I will see you tomorrow. Okay? I will see you guys tomorrow. Have a good evening, have a good night, have a good morning, wherever in the world you are. Until tomorrow. Bye.
Jamaica's track and field legacy is unmatched. It is a story of triumph, resilience, and extraordinary talent. But do you know the stories behind the athletes who brought us glory? Hi, I'm HP, founder of HP Chat Track. My mission is simple: to celebrate the rich legacy of Jamaica track and field and shine a light on the incredible people who make it happen. Winning that race was a dream come true, but the journey wasn't easy. It's not just about medals, it's about inspiring the next generation. Jamaica track and field isn't just a sport, it's our pride, our culture, our heart. Every week I sit down with athletes, coaches and fans to bring you stories of dedication, passion and legacy. Plus, we've got exciting news and exclusive insights into the world of track and field. Make your Thursday night be at HP's place. Come hang out with us at HP Chat Track Studio, where track and